Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Paco Lebron. This is the place to learn how to run your IT service business, whether you are a one-person shop or a boutique MSP, as we like to say in our communities nowadays, or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. Let me go ahead and introduce our guest today. We have none other than he has been a guest prior, a returning guest, a great person that I love to chat with. We have George Smith, who is the head of community and strategic partnerships over at Augmentt. George, how are you today?
I'm good, Paco. Thanks so much for having me today. It's good to be back.
No, I appreciate you coming back, my friend. I think, you all have been such great partners for MSP Unplugged, TechCon Unplugged. You were just at our recent event here this past September. Derek and Brad, we had a great opportunity to conversate with them, talk more about the product, some of the great things that you kind of have coming on. And then also a great partner for us over here at ProdigyTeks. We are an Augmentt partner. And, I think for us, we had been a partner for some time, but we never really dove into the product as we have over the last several months, just because of how important Microsoft 365 security is going on. And we were just down this road where it was time for us to really take it seriously on how do we not only optimize our ops and our tech team, but also just understanding, what we know on endpoints. We now need to figure out how to put the pulse on being able to figure out Microsoft 365 security as well. And so you and I were having some conversations on how we were implementing the tool across our clientele, especially the secure module, which we'll go into, which is specifically on the Microsoft 365 platform. But for me, I'm always thinking about, okay, if I am finding great success with this, and I understand a little bit on that, I always tend to think about the MSP Unplugged attendees, listeners. How can I help them work on a great product like this? Because I'm a big believer where if I like something and I think it's a great hit, like I want to tell everybody about it. But there's one piece about this that you and I talked about is, how do you sell this thing? Like, how do you sell security easily? And I think that that's a big piece for us that we tend to just, fall over ourselves on, do a bunch of tech word vomit, trying to really figure out how to sell and really just figure out how to do that. So that's why the title of this recording is, demystifying cybersecurity for your end user, right? A guide for the MSPs on communicating security and things of that nature. So you were nice enough to get some slides together for us here, really go and to get some visuals for those that are tuning in on the video. You can go on to youtube.com/MSP Unplugged if you're listening to the audio version of this episode. But George, I'll kind of just carry it over to you and just, as the slide says, how do MSPs talk security? I think it's a very complex conversation, and I'm hoping those listening will get some value out of it.
Yeah, it is. And for our audio listeners, just want to highlight the title says, how do MSPs sell security? And we've got a big X through sell and replaced it with talk security. And I think that's the key theme to take away from today's conversation is, ultimately we as MSPs are trying to sell our services, grow our business, grow our bank account. But whenever it comes to the evolving services that MSPs are providing, a lot of which is linked with risk management, with cybersecurity, we have to first how to understand how to talk specifically about that. If you ask the most regular folks on the street about cybersecurity, for a lot of people, it's still, I don't really know. You're a cybersecurity guy. Very cool. It's very sci-fi, high-tech IT. And so what we in the channel need to do is help really break down some of those misconceptions and simplify a lot of bits and pieces so that end users can begin to understand some of the key components of cybersecurity, so as it relates to them. And then once you find out some of those pain points, some of those triggers, some of those emotional responses that you're looking for, those are the things that you can leverage to begin to highlight your services specifically. So if we hop to the next slide, Paco, I think the main thing that we want to highlight is really keeping security simple. And whenever we want to talk about security, what is the main thing that we are trying to prevent? It's a breach, right? Being hacked. That is something that everyone knows the meaning of, but maybe not everyone quite understands the parameters of. Again, speaking to average Joe Blow on the street, You ask them what getting hacked looks like or what a breach looks like. They tell you it's the Death Star blowing up, a couple of pesky kids in a Millennium Falcon, right, doing some damage. Whereas we in the channel know that's actually not the case at all. It's a very calculated, planned strategy. And again, now we're seeing, and I say it's calculated and planned, but it's not actually as targeted as it once was, Paco, I would say. We were seeing now hackers with that more shotgun approach as opposed to the targeted sniper. And it's just, they're not using the phishing lines anymore. They're using the nets, and it's whatever comes up, that's what they'll take. Okay. So helping explain what a breach looks like to end users can be really helpful. And again, MSPs, this is very familiar, but let's simplify it for our clients. So often it will start with phishing and explaining what phishing is. So a phishing email gets successfully delivered. Okay. Then we can move on to what's happening all around social engineering. Okay, so rapport is built, impersonations are completed, and ultimately the user clicks a phishing link. And you can draw on real life examples from the world. The MGM breach from earlier this year is a tremendous example that stemmed from social engineering and phishing, and looked what happened there. Hundreds of millions of dollars lost every day. People couldn't even get into their rooms. None of the electronic slot machines were working. Everything is so interconnected now. Moving on from that, it's all then about sort of the identity security. So again, focusing on Microsoft, if someone breaches that number one business critical application, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So if the hackers get a hold of the password there, it's game over. So what kind of things can you put in place to prevent that? We talk about MFA and other key security postures, but if that's not in place, it's just making it easy for the bad actors. Then the actual app security itself. So once they've got the password, well, now they're in. Bad actor has access to the corporate systems. And unlike the Death Star blowing up, no one knows. There's no monitoring. There's no alerting on suspicious activity. And so they can go about their dirty business, deploying malware, ransomware, beginning to steal corporate data and lock things up. And really, I think there's some stats out there that sometimes breaches happen and people don't even know about it for over 200 days later, which is crazy to think about. And then ultimately, what's the end result? Well, data loss. Corporate files are corrupted or deleted, and you're kind of held to ransom. And that's another key stat that we're seeing as well, is a lot of people think, well, I'm too small. And there's that classic phrase now emerging, well, you're not too small to be hacked. You're just too small to make the news, right? Someone can make 5-10 grand off you, and it's the police or the FBI are going to bother. That's what they're going to do all day, every day, right?
And I think it's important for those that are listening and to understand that, social engineering has become such a bigger piece to what's happening nowadays, especially for those that feel that, oh, well, I'm okay. I have MFA, I have all that, et cetera, taken care of. Well, believe it or not, the bad actors have configured their ways of being able to get a phishing email or some type of social engineering so that they can just grab the session and grab the cookie from that. It's on that browser session that you've authenticated with MFA. So sometimes even MFA is not helping. It's a great deterrent, but even then you're not safe. And that's why it's so important to understand that there's so many stages to this state of a security breach, of an incident, because sometimes with tools like Augmentt can identify some of these things, in my opinion, and help you get to it faster, even though you have the right things in place. So it's just something to highlight on social engineering for those that are listening. Like, yeah, we know what phishing is. Yeah, we know what social engineering is. But, A, does your client know? And B, have you explained the gravity of how social engineering is getting today's days?
Yeah, and I would add as well, Paco, let's face it, it's only going to get worse. There's a huge advance in technology that we're seeing over the past few months and years, with the AI catapulting us forward even more so. And that's helping out with a lot of productivity and a lot of businesses. But, bad guys get to use that too, right? I mean, imagine a scenario where your grandma or someone gets a video call and it's your face and your voice on the screen saying you've just been arrested and need X amount of money. Your grandma's going to send that over every day of the week. But there's a future where that's actually just a hacker who's gotten all your bits and pieces online and is able to kind of render that image and voice like that. That's kind of the future where things are going. It's pretty scary. So helping people understand this is the world we live in now, educating them to what phishing, social engineering is so that they can begin to be suspicious and guard against it has to be step number one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone who follows Art Gross over at Breach Secure now, but he just posted a video recently where I don't know what AI app he was using for the deep fake, but he literally had a side by side of himself kind of just moving his head around and such. And and then the search bar basically said, he typed in a celebrity's name, 8K UHD, or I think it was UHD, and he was moving his head, and it literally was mapping him. And he put George Clooney, and it said side by side, and it looked dead like George Clooney. He put Tom Cruise, it looked like Tom Cruise. So like, yeah, it's getting to the point where it's now accessible, and it's crazy. And how, like, I've seen how crazy it gets, but like, just to have that done in such real time, it's coming. And now there's going to need to be putting some things in place to kind of detect for some of that.
Yeah, 100%. So once we get those stages defined, we can then begin to talk to our clients about what user security looks like. Okay, so here's some of the key steps. What can we do to actually help prevent these and protect you from these incidents? So coming back to the first thing with phishing, well, anti-phishing. Okay, we want to implement a solution that's just going to block those emails. Okay, we have sophisticated tools at our disposal that will be able to eliminate the majority of phishing emails that comes in, so you don't even need to see them. You won't even know that they're there. But the ones that do get through, and they do come through sometimes, we want to provide cybersecurity awareness training to you and your team so that your users, your employees, your staff are educated on cybersecurity. And again, Paco, I'm pretty sure you're seeing it too. Compliance is coming in much more. We're seeing a growing demand from small to medium businesses, maybe not always for the right reasons in terms of this is something that we should be interested in and be educating ourselves on. Sometimes people just want to get a box ticked for insurance purposes, but in either case, it's an opportunity to provide those services.
Yeah, no, and it's a matter of, and especially going down to, like you said, like security awareness training. I think a lot of people have different opinions about it. It's a waste of time. It doesn't work. It's dry, things of that nature. That used to be the case in my opinion, in the corporate America days when I was back 10 years ago or so. I think we've gotten so better with security awareness training now, and especially with the stat of 70% being 70% less likely to have an incident occur to you because of that front of mind education. And there are many platforms that are out there now that I implore those that are looking into it, really diving in and, drink your own champagne, really understanding how your team, how you want to participate. Because for me, I'm a true believer where if the content is not great, I'm not going to sit through it. And so there are platforms that do make it a somewhat enjoyable experience, believe it or not, for security awareness training. But it's so important on being able to have that along with some of the items that we just talked about as well on how you're doing for your offerings.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say as well, we can come back to that topic a little bit later, Paco. There's an emerging, as you say, I wouldn't call it a split, but there's definitely people who, with the phishing side of things, just sending people phishing emails and be like, ha, gotcha, you're an idiot, sometimes isn't always the best training method. It can build a lot of animosity between end users and MSPs or even their own IT department. People don't like being caught out or tripped up. And so having a more educational approach and having a tool that supports that actually is more of a classroom focus than a test focus is something that we're seeing an emergence of as well, like true training as opposed to just testing. Absolutely. But moving forward into the sort of the next step, then we want to actually talk about user security. And I think that is the big thing that we're seeing now, that has to be a focus of MSPs. It's protecting the user, so who they are and what they're using. So in the case for something like Microsoft, it's validating that identity and it's making sure that those accounts have MFA on, that you have things like conditional access policies in place, that your login portal is branded so that those folks actually know that they're logging into their instance and tenant of Microsoft and not, clicking through something that a hacker set up and is trying to steal their credentials from. And then within the actual app themselves, and this is the big thing I think that MSPs really need to sit down with their clients and have a conversation around is the app security itself. I think there's a huge misconception out there with end users thinking, well, I have Paco, he's my MSP, I give him good money every month and he's protecting me from all my IT. And that's a very broad statement. And Paco, I'm sure you roll your eyes when you hear comments like that as well. And I'm sure you have a master services agreement that you can produce and say, actually, here are the exact things that you are paying me for and that I am implementing and securing you for. And, you know, your Canva account is not one of them. Right. I don't even know if I'm using that. Right. So if we come back to Microsoft 365, it's helping your clients understand, number one, Microsoft does not come secure out of the box. Okay. And they have some fine print that as part of the Augmentt sales resources we can share. So you as the MSP can say, look, I'm not the bad guy here. Here's what Microsoft are saying. They're saying we don't come secure out of the box. You should be using third-party tools and backup to make this secure, to provide disaster recovery services. And if you get hacked, it's your problem, not ours. Okay. We take no accountability for that. So someone needs to be responsible for securing this product that you're using. And once it's secured, nothing can ever be 100% secure, right? Security is not a product, it's a discipline. So we also need to make sure that we're continuously monitoring and providing real-time alerts for breaches, for suspicious activity, so that we can react in a timely manner to secure and lock down those accounts. So app security is a critical part of this conversation. And then the aftermath is that safety net. Well, what happens if something terrible does go wrong? We want to make sure that we have a backup and disaster recovery service in place. So if corporate data is lost or files become corrupted, we can just leverage the backup and you retain all of that critical information for your business.
Yeah, no, and so the conversation, there's two things, right, that brought to mind, and one is, exactly like you mentioned, is if your client believes you're doing all and you are not doing all, the problem is you're not communicating to your client. You're not having those reviews. You're not having those conversations. So that means that you either are only checking in with them every year, if that, or your conversations are, hey, look at how many tickets and patches I've done, and thanks. And you're not really diving in and being that business advisor, really understanding what's going on with their business, and just, again, doing the due diligence on letting them understand and being able to talk security is such a huge point of that. And so it's not that you have to sell them everything all the time, because maybe you're afraid of, well, I already have sold them this and I don't want to add on an additional item because now I'm just going to nickel and dime them. Well, that means you don't have confidence in your own stack or of your own operation of the security. So how do you fix that? Well, you do things like educate yourself. You do partner with great partners like Augmentt and understanding, whereas we've just now broken this down on these different stages of, here's the problems, here are the solutions to solve those pain points. And that's how you move forward. Ultimately, there are a vast amount of resources and communities to help with you gain confidence on what you're offering, especially when you partner with great tools like some of these. The other piece that I wanted to highlight as well is just really understanding the point of, as you look into talking security and really just trying to understand, all right, what's my next step? What is the ability for me to say, all right, Mr. Client or Mr. Our client, we're going to have anti-phishing, we're going to have the security awareness training, we're going to do this, but we're going to guide you. You are the hero of your own story, and empowering them and having that conversation, because when they feel that it's in their wheelhouse to do, there's so much more emphasis and acceptance of what you're trying to do for them. So those are the two things that I wanted to make sure that we highlight, is that if you are not talking about it and you feel that this is something where it's truly important, but you haven't had these conversations and the client believes that, there is no conversation happening to not only help mitigate risk, but ultimately, because we've said this, you can't protect anyone 100%. Our job is to mitigate risk. But I'll even peel that back in an additional layer, especially to what we're talking about here. Our job as MSPs are not to protect. Our job is to ensure that our clients are defensible as possible, so that they're not deemed negligent by their end users, which is, again, the resources that are available from Augmentt to mention of what Microsoft 365 brings to the table. Hey, this is what we're bringing to the table, and this is how we can ensure that you can prove you are doing what you need to do for your end user, and that's why we're here as your business advisor. So, long ramble, but that's wanted to highlight those things on. Yes, we're talking about user security, but all in all, we are advising our clients' businesses on what to do to make sure that they can stay in business.
Yeah, you'll notice even just from that talk track there, like not once have we brought up like selling anything or pricing or anything. It's let me break this down for you. Let me help you understand. And we know as folks in the channel that there's a lot more detail, a lot more meat you can put on these bones. But getting too technical too quickly is a surefire way to lose interest. There's 5 simple things there, guys, that you can have open a conversation with. How does a breach happen? Phishing, social engineering, identity security, app security, data loss. Okay, so that's what happens. How do we begin to provide assistance with preventing that? Anti-phishing, security training, user security, app security, backup, and data recovery. So the nice thing is, the shameless plug here is that at Augmentt, we provide all of those services. So we have an email security tool that prevents a lot of those, suspicious emails ever coming into view from the user. We have a security training platform as well. Again, that is focused purely on training. So it's helping folks tick that compliance box in terms of X amount of tests and modules of training of being completed over a certain time period. But we actually use it ourselves at Augmentt as a corporation. So I can say firsthand, we do a really good job of using humor in it. So sometimes and the tests themselves are only a few minutes as well, but they can be quite funny and entertaining. And I think that, to your point, Paco, if it's very dry and boring, it becomes a bit of a burden. So having some fun with it definitely makes it a little bit more enjoyable. And it's something that you remember then as well, those little pieces. Ultimately, though, our bread and butter is the Microsoft 365 security monitoring and management. And I'm sure Paco can speak to that a little bit more detail as, ProdigyTeks are using it as well. And then we also have a backup service as well. So we actually do backup M365 and some other applications out there. So Augmentt can be your one-stop shop, providing you everything that you need to secure your Microsoft M365 environment for your clients. But maybe, Paco, we can kind of jump into some of the more detail around the M365 stuff. So for anyone who isn't familiar with Augmentt, this is what we focus on. Our kind of motto is simplifying M365 security for MSPs. And this came out of the experience and the feedback that we were getting from MSP partners that we know Microsoft isn't secure out of the box. It's not multi-tenant. And so to go and make it secure is just a very challenging, cumbersome, and manually intensive process. Okay, you have to go tenant by tenant to do things user by user. And sure, there's ways that smart MSPs try to leverage, things like PowerShell scripts to help speed up and automate some of those processes. But, as you hear this, people will probably giggle and roll their eyes because they've been there, done that, seen that. Microsoft changes the name of something. Microsoft changes where something lives. And all of a sudden, the PowerShell script that you spent hours working on 2 weeks later no longer works. So what we've done at Augmentt is we have built this multi-tenant MSP-specific platform that's fully integrated with CSP as well, that allows you to pull all of your tenants into a single pane of glass and then view different dashboards around different specific metrics to help you lock down the account. So we can have a threat report, for example, really good sales tool to highlight all of the risky things that are happening in the Microsoft environment. Ultimately share that with your client and ask that question. Look, here's all the bad things that are happening. Someone's got to take care of this. Is it me or is it you? If it's me, that's fine. We can definitely sort this out for you. Here's the cost of that service that we're going to add onto your next bill. Or if it's going to be you, if you want to take responsibility, that's no problem either. But please sign this risk acceptance letter or this denial of service form, because if a breach happens in 3 months' time, I don't want you coming knocking on my door and pointing the finger at me. I'm sharing this information. I want to help. But you're a business too, Mr. Client. I'm sure you like getting paid for the work you do as well. Right. For the folks you can see on the screen, we have our posture report as well, which is actually a really, really handy tool for once clients begin to understand and become interested in the process of securing Microsoft. Sharing with them that Microsoft isn't secure, there's all these different checks that need to be implemented, and then being able to kind of show a clean report that highlights those. Admin MFA, user MFA, blocking legacy authentication policies, all these different bits and pieces. This report pulls that information in, shows whether it's on or off, configured or not, is it compliant. We actually provide the rationale directly from Microsoft. Okay, so Microsoft says this should be on and important because here's why. We also even have a column that maps directly to the CIS controls. So if you're someone who's following the CIS network CIS framework, which is, I'm a big fan of. I think they've done a really good job of providing very granular, detailed steps for helping MSPs begin to increase security and compliance bit by bit. Maybe you're not sure what corresponds to what. Well, we can show you an Augmentt. If you get admin MFA turned on, that's going to go to CIS M365, 1.1.2 or whatever it is, right? As well as, here's the kicker that a lot of folks are interested in. If you turn this particular configuration on, how is it going to directly impact your Microsoft security score? Which is what a lot of end users focus on. Oh, my end score is not very good. It's only 27%. How can we increase that? Well, let me show you this report. Whenever you stack all of these things together, you're going to get a 37% increase. Okay, and we can continue to add to that month to month. And that's why we're signing you up to our managed services Microsoft Enhanced Security Program, Mr. Customer. I mean, Paco, you've been working with us for a while now. What are kind of some of your thoughts on the posture report? Is it something you guys have been able to use with clients or even internally, just give a bit more clarity on what the MSP roadmap is to get things looking a little bit tidier?
Yeah, so it's really all of the above, right? So, you hit a lot of great points where for us internally, we applied it to ourselves, and being able to identify kind of what are the best practices of each individual tenant. And that's the great thing about Augmentt, right? Is that each of these steps may not be the same for each individual account on what is needed to be addressed. And so the way that the posture status works, the compliance status, is a great opportunity to kind of just, read by eye. And I think that's a very huge thing, especially when you're dealing with training and you have employees and you're dealing with level 1 techs or maybe an outsourced help desk that are monitoring things. If it's not green and it's yellow or red, it's probably a bad situation. And so that's been great for us, and really trying to, as our onboarding, when we go for our clients, we'll go ahead and pull that threat report, like you mentioned, and we'll let them know and said, hey, we ran an audit. Here's what we got going on for your stuff. This is the things that we're going to start working on. And then once we kind of have after our onboarding period, we show them the threat report again, showing them by eye the progress that has happened. So now we've been given a tangibility of how we're locking things down or we're doing best practices for them. But also, I think the most important thing for us is that, as you mentioned, CIS framework, we're a big fan of that. That's what we follow here internally. I think that for us, the CIS framework was talked very heavily and as a standard to follow for MSPs. I think I was listening to the CEO over at Blackpoint on a podcast at one point, and he was mentioning how CIS is one of those frameworks you want to follow. And then obviously Matt Lee over at PAX 8 is a big proponent on CIS and what it does, and just having I don't know, and this is not his words, this is my words, of having a checklist per se of being able to just know what to identify and how to address for your clients is huge, especially for step one, inventory one, because inventorying your assets, not only physical, but also in the cloud, is so important. So for us, this is really our go-to. We always are trying to strive for that ever elusive 100% for the posture status, but it definitely allows us to understand what CA policies, conditional access policies to create. How do we block some of the things, and just more education in general, like why you should block this legacy authentication policy, why you should implement your DLP policy in a certain way to avoid these type of things. I think for those kind of going into the security space, whether you are a break fix or coming into doing managed services, or you've been doing managed services for so long and you're just trying to ensure that I hate to say the word stay relevant, but to ensure that you're keeping up with what's going on in today's landscape. And how do you do that? It's a great way, in my opinion, and an easy way to do so. I mean, again, my level 1 techs can look at this and they can figure out what needs to be done fairly well. And the fact that you have a lot of the button places to kind of click and do some of these things, which we'll probably have in some of the other slides, on how easy it is to implement some of the things that are being highlighted.
Yeah, I would say I ran a great little webinar with Jennifer Gleam over at MSP Sales Revolution, and the title was "Demonstrate, Don't Argue," which I think is the perfect little segue into some of the next points we want to make. Just, you can show people the key quantitative stats that we're able to pull in from Microsoft into a user-friendly, clean report, and just have them sit and kind of mull that over, right? The whole point is that we are simplifying this information so that, and again, CEOs probably want to see different information from a CFO, or, depending on who you be aware of who you're presenting and speaking to, and understand what motivates them and what are their main concerns, because they may want to drill into something slightly different from another C-level executive or another key decision maker.
Right.
So to kind of, again, further simplify things, whenever we are working with our partners at Augmentt, how we talk about security, number one, keep it simple. You can shorten that to KISS, which stands for Keep It Simple Stupid. So, which is an acronym our chairman and founder Gavin Garbutt loves to use. So he's always talking about the KISS principle. Yep. Keep it simple, stupid, which I like. And then number
or for
two,
those that feel like they can't use it, you can always say keep it simple, silly, for those that don't want to offend your staff as well. Because I like to keep it simple, stupid, but I've been told I can't say that via HR. So you can always do silly as well, if depending on your company culture.
At least for the next couple of years, maybe, Paco, until silly becomes too much of a prod as well. And then we can just keep it KISS with one S. Just keep it simple.
There you go.
So then number two, focus on what they care about. And we kind of touched on that lightly. I'm a big proponent of some of the other folks in the space. Danny Boyle wrote a really great book over at Ninja One, Sell More, Do Less. It talks about tapping into, the emotional versus the logical decision makers, and really working hard to understand what the emotional drivers are. Even though we all like to think we're logical decision makers in terms of doing our research, our analysis, actually something like 80% of decisions are placed in from an emotional standpoint. So understanding what those main issues are from the people you're talking to. Are they trying to save money? Have they experienced a breach in the past and they want to make sure that doesn't happen again, or they're doing everything they can to prevent it? Are they overwhelmed with IT in general and they're just needing support? Find out what that is so you can cater and highlight the services and value that you can provide. But number three, avoid technical reports. I think, to use a comparison, how many MSPs are, outsourcing their finance services to, maybe an accountancy firm or marketing, and how many eyes roll whenever an accountant gets really heavily detailed into your taxes and stuff. And it's kind of like, dude, like, I'm not like, I'm paying you to do this. Like, just help me understand what the problem is, how you're going to fix it, and how much it's going to cost me. And if I can understand those three things, then great, I have enough for a decision that I want to make. So apply that to your own MSP business as well. Don't get too technical unless the person really wants to go there. Keep things high level and keep things simple.
It's funny you say that, because I just had that hit home a little bit as well, because I just had our meeting with our CPA, and the way that they presented the information to me, it was one of those where like, that's not right. But I wouldn't have been able to say that's not right had they not been able to give me a much more clearer vision to then pull the thread on to figure out what's going on. And so for us, it allowed us to bring that back home, like you said, as a professional service entity. How do we ensure that we do that same type of visualization? And you hit it right on the head, is you got to avoid the technical reports. You have to give them a nice summary of what it is that you're doing, easy, and that just hits home so much faster.
Yeah, and we want to, walk the walk as well as talk the talk with our partners as well. So, whenever you become an Augmentt partner, we have a huge resource library full of white label PowerPoints, infographics, email templates, all kind of things that you guys can use that follow these principles. Because again, we understand MSPs are busy and often don't have the time, to sit down and think about some of these sales and marketing materials. So we just make it available to you guys free of charge. And I think that's another big thing around time, is that I find, for I don't have time to do this. And it's like, well, do you have time to download a Word document and put your logo on it and send it out to a couple of people? Because that's how easy we're trying to make it for you. So, what's the next excuse?
Yep.
So we'll talk a little bit about, currently, like, how MSPs are managing Microsoft security efficiently. So what are some of the things that the people are doing well in 2023 and hopefully moving forward? I think the key messages here are strong settings equals less risk and less work. So, talking about that security posture setting or that posture report gives you a really clear internal roadmap of what you need to do for each client, what needs to go from red or orange to green in order to build that wall and establish that security. So again, making it easy. And then ultimately having a solution like Augmentt that helps connect the dots and isn't just providing the map, but is providing the tools and functionality that makes it easy for you, the MSP, to implement.
And I do want to highlight this because, again, as us being partners, and we love this capability, is, as everyone sees who are viewing this podcast, is that, under status, those are buttons. So like, they're not just statuses. Like, you can actually click on these things or on the setting right next to it to be able to figure out how to configure this, and really understanding on how, and it'll tell you configured, not configured, or I forgot what the gray button is, but that how it's not relevant to
not
your
measured.
score. Not measured. Thank you. And really understanding how to get to that security posture. So I think, again, reading by eye is so important. And again, being able to really see that and being able to do that within a matter of a couple clicks is so huge.
Yeah, I mean, even like, for example, MFA, that's a big thing we want to get turned on. In Augmentt, you can do things like turn on MFA with a click of a button, establish and create and manage conditional access, which is huge. We have a lot of partners that specifically say our MFA report is worth the price alone, because it's the only place that they can get that high level view across their entire Microsoft IT estate of what is happening with MFA. Which company it has things looking good, which company needs help. Okay, let's drill into that company. Here's all the users, all their license types, their roles, what conditional access, their policy, what conditional access policies they're part of. And ultimately, are they protected? Yes or no? And that's something that you can schedule as a report and save, which I think is critically important, Paco, for just protecting yourself in the future. If there's ever an audit or a claim or something that you have to deal with. Hey, Paco, you said that you were responsible and did have MFA enabled for this particular user at this time where, we've occurred that something bad may have happened. Can you prove it? Yeah, let me just pull this Augmentt report. Here it is from the month of whatever. As you can see, George Smith did have MFA on. He was under this conditional access policy. Is right here to see as proof. Next question.
And what's huge about that is, and I'm going to give you a scenario that we had at our, one of our clients. So it's a nonprofit. About several years ago, we ended up migrating, or maybe even it was about a couple of years ago, where we migrated from their Google Workspace system to Microsoft, and it carried on all of these users that were there. Now, granted, all sign-ins were blocked and all that sort of stuff, but the explanation was, hey, we have all of these accounts that need to get rid of because they're appearing obviously in the MFA report that MFA is not configured, is enabled, but these are not non-users that are being used. So we need to get rid of them. This has gone on for years until we actually had the report identifying you have a total of 92 accounts in your account. You are a 10 to 15%, I think 20% now, 20% nonprofit with some board members. Once they saw the number, their eyes went big and they actually took us serious. And the important lesson there is being able to identify with context in an easy way drives home so much more of the results you're looking for. Because again, you can shout to your blue in the face on how this is important, but it took them to see that number to really understand the gravity of, we got to get on this, because we didn't. And the question was, or the statement in the meeting was, we didn't realize it was that many.
Exactly. There's a lot. Demonstrate, don't argue. Here it is, guys. Like you said, that's so interesting. You guys are a 10-person organization. Here's 92 accounts that are active.
Of all these shared mailboxes of employees you've never had to use before that we've converted. Why are we even keeping this information? Anyway, so
Barry that left 7 years ago, he's still on here. Right? So
former nonprofit board. Anyway, so going back to what you were saying, demonstrate, don't argue, and the fact of the context of being able to have that just brings home so much further. But I know you were going into the quick baseline, which is one of my favorite things applying to a lot of our clients when we onboard them.
Yeah, it's certainly like a brand new bit of functionality that we're super excited about. So quick baselining is available as of today. We're in December 2023, and as of January, so next month, we'll actually be releasing the full version. And so what we talk about when we're discussing baselining for the listeners is the ability to standardize what you want to happen in terms of security policies and postures and roll that out en masse across all of your tenants at once. So even though Augmentt's done a pretty good job to date of connecting the dots, providing the roadmap, and then letting you still within our platform go in and configure that, we want to take it to the next level and just say, okay, I have this baseline. I don't care who you are, what you do, you will always need to have these checks in place. Boom, click a button, roll it out, done. And then from there, we want to then further develop specific templates. So you, the MSP, can actually create your own custom ones based on what you value as well. And then even go as far as having specific ones related to compliance. So if you have a HIPAA client that needs to, follow those regulations, you can design, we'll have, a specific baseline specifically devoted to HIPAA that you can roll out, and will definitely get you on the road to helping them achieve compliance with HIPAA standards.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for that to come out too, because as you mentioned, being able to have that as a quick baseline, and it's one of those where I think we've gotten to an age where people just start to click buttons and just hope for the best, and allowing us to not only do that, but really seeing what it's actually doing, right? Like, here are the checkbox, here's the explanations, I think go such a long way on explaining some of that stuff.
Well, Paco, you would probably know better than myself. I mean, there's a huge conversation around the future right now and where, technology is going, the needs around cybersecurity, but the massive lack of talent that there is going to be able to manage cybersecurity and implement a lot of the things that are needed in order to secure the vast majority of businesses in the future. And so that's something that we're really trying to drill into as well, and helping through things like Engage, through things like these baselining technology, make it easy for level 1 technicians, junior technicians, folks who are still fairly green when it comes to IT and cybersecurity, being able to empower them to tick boxes for the senior guys so they can really focus on the heavy, complex stuff and the project work and some more of the lucrative tasks, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a huge thing that you mentioned too, because for us, we do the upskilling. So when we look for our people, our staff, talent to bring into our own MSP, we hire on customer service first, because I feel like that is a trait you cannot teach. So if they are good in customer service, they're good in hospitality, being able, and they want to learn, those are my type of people, because the experience of the client is what's most important. Everything else can be taught on the tech wise. And so tools like similar to like this, as I mentioned before with Augmentt, and again, Augmentt, as you saw in the previous slides for those watching, Augmentt does many things. And inside of one of the tools itself, they have other opportunities on just being able to manage Microsoft 365 alone, not only just on the security side, but on the engagement side as well, offboarding, onboarding, creating things. That has been such a huge piece for our junior and our level 1 techs, because especially even like our dispatcher, hey, I need to reset the password of so-and-so, or I need to offboard this user. She has the ability to just log in, click a button, boom, it's done. She has the information. Hey, Mr. User, or we've gone ahead and took care of this situation. We're going to go ahead and send you a reply via the ticket and close it out. Thank you very much. The amount of time it lowers on being able to provide a great experience is something that you cannot put a dollar on. And so being able to have that is such a huge impact, especially being able to do something as simple, as intuitive that you can do in the platform. I can't speak enough about of how it's really helped us really try to, again, saving time, right? And I think we've gotten to, and this is me going into a little bit of a ramble and a diatribe, is that, I feel that the MSP industry tends to not look for what makes sense for themselves at the time that they feel that they are ready. I think they're always busy. They always feel that they don't have time to sit for a demo, or, I don't want to be bothered, Mr. Vendor. We're okay with what we have right now. And they don't truly know that, look, I get that it, you know, and there are vendors and partners like you all that genuinely care. It's not the sale, which obviously you're a business, you have to make money. But in reality, it's really trying to figure out if you give me 30 minutes, I can show you how I can save you hours with your entire team. Like, and you truly do vet that, right? And it's things like having you on podcasts and webinars and things of that nature for you all to show that is such an important piece to understand that for us as MSPs have to be on the lookout for tools like Augmentt and things of that nature, because you just don't know when there's going to be a time where you really need a break, and you may need that break really badly, and you just happen to be watching, you see something like this, and you find that there is a partner out there that you can partner with to help make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I really, I agree with everything you said, Paco. And I'm really pleased to hear that you know, Augmentt Engage is helping you in the way that we built it to be helpful for MSPs. You know, the whole idea is as you said, ticket comes in, go into Augmentt Engage, so you don't even need to give those technicians access to the Microsoft portal. Click the user, click the big button that does the thing, password reset, turn on MFA, block sign in, onboarding, offboarding, change your license, whatever it is you need, done. And it goes that there's so many other use cases. We have guys that are using it as part of co-managed, which we know is a growing theme as well. To your point, not thinking about the future, where is it going? Co-managed is going to be so big over the next few years, right? IT people working at you know, mid-market or small to medium businesses, you know, they don't want to be doing that stuff, right? Or maybe they do, maybe they want to offload it, but having the ability to say, yep, we can actually give you your own little version through Augmentt's permissions that you can go in and do this stuff yourself. You don't need to even submit a ticket. You can reset your own passwords and whatnot. A lot of people using offshore 24/7 help desks, right? Again, don't want to give the keys of the kingdom. Just give them access to Augmentt Engage, and you know that they can take care of 80% of the most common tickets that come through. But I just want to touch lightly on one of the things you said, Paco, about, you know, not thinking about what you're going to need and having sort of too much time on the here and now. I think that's so important, and I would encourage every MSP, you know, to spend at least an hour a week doing your research, whether it's listening to podcasts, reading articles, attending webinars, finding out what is happening in the channel, what's happening, you know, around the world, and giving yourself some time with a pen and paper. Get off your screen, grab a cup of coffee, you know, go outside and start thinking about what your business is going to look like in 3 to 5 years. And at Augmentt, we're definitely preparing for a world at the end of this decade, so by the time 2030 rolls around, where small to medium businesses do not have IT staff anymore. Firmly believe that. They're not going to be paying salaries to people who, you know, turn things on and off again and change the cartridges. You know, they'll be able to have a much more cost-effective line item by working with a specialist MSP, which presents a huge opportunity for MSPs to capitalize on that interest and need. And with everything getting more and more digital, it's only going to grow. So now at the end of 2023, starting in 2024, there's no better time to take that pen and paper and say, well, what's my business going to look like in 2027? And how can I start preparing for that now, whether it's having cultural items like you mentioned, Paco, focusing on people with customer service and really good soft skills, knowing that you can use great modern technology like Augmentt and mentorship to kind of level them up through their own skill set. I would really encourage MSPs to adopt that approach and start thinking about the long term a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Back into some other bits and pieces, just to get back on track. One of the things we did want to touch on as well was like reducing noise from unnecessary alerts. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here. We know that there is a lot of alerting tools out there in the market, and a lot of MSPs, you know, leverage SOC and SIM services, which is great. How our alerts work is that we actually sit on top of and basically improve the Microsoft alerting engine itself. So for folks who don't know, or maybe painfully do, unfortunately, in Microsoft, alerts are either on or off. It's a toggle. Either you have them or you don't. And if you do, you will get a lot of alerts because yes, Microsoft will alert you to something that you do want to see and be notified of, like a sign in from a risky country, but that is going to get buried in the other alerts that you get for things like this update was completed, this patch was deployed, this MFA was challenged, but nothing actually happened. Like someone just came and knocked the door and then walked away again. So it was a bit of a non-issue really. And so whenever you understand that, you can get hundreds of alerts per day. But if you're an MSP that's managing a dozen, 2 dozen, over 50 different instances of Microsoft, it is a tsunami of alerts. And so what we've done at Augmentt is we now give you the ability within the Augmentt platform to basically categorize and filter the alerts that you want to see. So you can go through and say, I only care about these alerts. And not only that, I only want to receive a ticket for this particular alert if it's at this particular threshold and severity. So I'm going to set this as, my threshold for only reach out to me if it's a medium or high, that kind of thing. And so in this way, within Augmentt, you can actually see the number of alerts that Microsoft would send through compared to the number of tickets or emails generated as a result. So for folks who, are using other alerting tools that, they find particularly noisy or generate alert fatigue, I definitely recommend you to check out Augmentt just purely for our alerting feature specifically, and just see how that measures up with helping you focus and pay attention to the things that really matter. And I think, Paco, you had a story as well about one of the alerts came through recently for you that helped you out with this certain situation.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So we secure all our stuff on our side with MFA and all that sort of deal. And so what we found was our dispatcher, we got an alert for impossible travel through via Augmentt, and it was one of those real-time alerts. And so when we saw that, I had to, my dispatcher is based in Texas, so and it said that they were in California. So, I jokingly pinged her to say, hey, just making sure you're not taking a vacation over in California that we didn't know about. And she's like, yeah, absolutely not. So the great part about it was it allowed us to know that there was a sign-in attempt, but there wasn't a way they didn't get in, right? And so it allowed us to say, all right, well, we're probably going to have to reset your password, recycle that. But since we have everything IP whitelisted, should be good to go. But the fact of it was able to notify us that someone was knocking was a huge benefit, because I think oftentimes we find alerts are reactive for many, many situations that once they've got in, this was the first time that we could actually see that someone was knocking at the door. And now we can take the precautions to avoid them having, sending her a phishing link to get that session of the cookie to get, bypass the MFA and then gain access to our system. Now, granted, she's not an admin in our system, but again, it just shows you how important it is to know what's happening, especially if there are people knocking on the door numerous times. It's probably something you should probably be aware of versus, in the ignorance of bliss, not knowing.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say, like, would you agree that energy and time are so important to be able to find and see those things and then follow through on good hygiene practices as well? And it's really hard to do that if you're still doing things manually or getting alerts for here, there, everywhere all the time, right? So Absolutely. Having that focus and using systems and platforms like Augmentt that help shut out a lot of that noise, help increase your efficiency to free up time for you to focus on some of more of those niche cases, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to kind of start to wrap things up here, guys, like top 3 ways to save time on Microsoft security, just to summarize. Number 1, strong baseline. So as you said, we have that coming straight away in January next year. We have a light version available at the minute. For anyone who's not using it, please check it out. So strong baseline, do the work once, right? That's what we're saying here. Why do you want to have a baseline? Why do you want to even have all these postures and checks in the first place? Standardization. Okay, it's a huge thing for general efficiency in businesses is just have standardization across the board. So not only are you doing the work once, but you're doing the work well, and then ultimately minimize the noise, right? And by minimizing the noise, you're doing less work. So do the work once, do the work well, do less work.
Yep. No, I think it's a huge proponent, or I should say, we are a huge proponent on understanding that if you make our jobs easier, meaning the MSP, that we make our clients' lives a lot easier as well. And that, again, being able to do that strong baseline, standardization, and I will say it one more time, standardization will ensure that you will have your predictable results that you have. And who doesn't like doing less work, right? So being able to have to not worry about some of those just things that just come up that probably you kick yourself in the pants to say, I probably wasted too much time on this, that I shouldn't have the ability to have to worry about this. It's such a big opportunity for us to know, especially when it comes to Microsoft security and how just vast it is. It's just one of those opportunities where you have a vendor like this of Augmentt, a partner to help you, again, figure it out, talk with some great people, and be so much more ahead than those that may be doing it manually.
Yeah, and to come back to the comment earlier about kind of thinking about the future, you know, here's a little kind of seed that I'll plant in for MSPs out there. You know, think about how many seats your technicians can manage today. Maybe it's 50, maybe it's 100, but ultimately, what's the goal, right? Like, how you can increase productivity if that technician can all of a sudden manage 150, 200, 600, right, through efficient tools that allow them to do the work once, do the work well, and do less work, right? That's going to massively drive your business and increase profitability. So, you know, begin to ask yourself those questions and start seeking solutions that provide the answers.
Yep. No, absolutely. George, you know, I really appreciate you spending this past hour on just helping us understand, communicating, and ultimately just having another opportunity to speak with our clients on why security is so important, especially those in the Microsoft 365 environment. Before we round out the episode, is there anything else that we wanted to share? Any communication methods of how our listeners can reach out to Augmentt, or maybe even you to pick your brain a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So our website, augmentwith2ts.com, there's some nice accessible links there to start a free trial or book a demo for anyone who's interested in diving in deep. I highly recommend that to everyone. If you want any specific information on pricing, more details, that is also available on the website, but you can contact sales@augmentt.com as well. And for anyone who wants to get in touch with me, just ping me on LinkedIn. Just search George Smith Augmentt in that search bar to bring me up. The mustache will be there, and make sure you include Augmentt because there's a lot of George Smiths in the world and on LinkedIn, so you might have trouble filtering.
Awesome. No, George, I really appreciate you taking out the time. Me, along with Rick, we are both very happy Augmentt partners. We look forward to partnering with you all much more in depth, not only just for our MSPs, but obviously here with MSP Unplugged as well. So I appreciate you taking out the time, speaking with our audience today, and appreciate all of you for tuning in. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday. You can watch the video podcast on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button so that you can be notified whenever a new episode is available. You can also, as you've heard throughout the podcast, can take us on the go with you audio. We are on Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, to name a few. If you enjoy what you're listening to, we would love for you to go ahead and leave a review on that respective podcatcher. It'll help us be found by other like-minded business owners like yourself. Once again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.